Good afternoon. For some of you, this is twice in 1 week. We don't do a webinar for months or summer and then do 2 in a week. And I think because we have so much to crack on with today, because we didn't do a session in August, I think we're just going to dive straight into the slides.
Let's do it. You should see the slides on your screen already, Luan.
Yeah, got
awesome.
them. So I'm Luan. This is Andy. These are our social media handles. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can read our bios on there, or you can read them in the event. We have a lot to get through with a 6-week roundup of all the social media changes that have happened and also some really cool data. But while we didn't do an event over the summer, we have been getting together. We have been plotting and planning and
we have
what we think is the event that we really want to attend and that you will really want to attend as well. We have just 11 super early bird tickets left at the moment, so the price will rise any hour, any day now. It's currently £200. It will go up to £250 after the next 11 tickets. On the 6th of November, you could be in one of these seats. You could be playing ping pong between speakers. That's what the pink table is along the side. And I hope, and I know you agree, Andy, I think we've put together a rather wonderful agenda and lineup of speakers.
Yeah, indeed. So this is an opportunity for everyone to nerd out, get very tactical on social media, particularly for B2B. If you're in B2B, this is definitely the event for you. So yeah, very excited. We've not done something of this scale before, so we're learning as we go. But yeah, as you said, Luan, I think we're both very, very pleased and quite humbled at the speaker lineup that we have. So anyway, scan the QR code. We'd love to see you there.
Yeah. Okay, let's dive in. We're going to start. If you haven't joined us before, if you can't remember, because it has been a few weeks and you've had holidays and kids around you, we summarize all the social media platform updates that have been announced. There's always lots to talk about in kind of testing or being discovered, but we try to stick to the ones that have actually happened and appeared and are available now or starting to roll out. So we will, in probably about 20 minutes, go platform by platform through them, but we're going to start off with some data and trends and insights. What we do in this session is try and round everything up for all of you busy people out there, not overwhelm you. We're not telling you that you need to do all of this and take it all away, but hopefully within the hour, you can get some fresh ideas, some fresh thinking, and maybe a few tactical changes along the way.
Love it. If you do need to do something else and you've got other higher priorities than listening to Luan and I for the next 50 minutes or so, firstly, how dare you? And then secondly, you feel free to scan this, put in your details, and it'll make sure you get the slides. I'll send them out, I think, probably next week or something. But yeah, you get the slides and recording. So want to make sure you don't miss out in case you've got to do something else. Right, Luan, should we dive in?
Yes, I love the data and insights that we've got today. So let's run through a few of them quite quickly and then maybe chat about them.
Awesome. All righty. Let's fire through it. So data and trends, lots going on here. So firstly, probably no big surprise here, but the order of magnitude that creators are outperforming brand engagement rates is pretty significant. If you look here on the left, if it's a little bit small, I apologize. Obviously, we get the slides to you. On Instagram, creators significantly outperform brands in terms of engagement rate, 3.5% versus 0.3. I think from my very ropey maths, that's 1,000%. So kind of significant difference here. No surprise, hugely, given that social media is social for a reason. Also, just helps remind us of the fact that whenever we're thinking, oh, Instagram engagement's bad, I'm going to try another platform, etc. Sometimes it's not all about replatforming. Sometimes it's just about reorientating the tactics, thinking about who you might be able to work with. And, I'm like a broken record because Luan is thoroughly bored of hearing me say this about the importance of collaboration on social content. And our success from when we were building our business, Content Cal, a number of years ago, was all defined by the people that we worked with. Because we had, maybe 5,000 followers on Instagram. But all that growth came from people talking about us.
Yeah. I think we're just going to add, there's different types of content creators. People's minds might go straight to, oh, I need to pay people and get the people with the big audiences and the big followers. Yes, you can. All those different levels of influencers, because the terminology creators and influencers is a bit interchangeable. But also think in terms of your creators, of your staff, your colleagues. Can they be sharing what they're working on and what they're up to and their client stories with you? Can you think about your customers, user-generated content as well? Your audience, this isn't just about finding what you might think of as creators that are earning a living from the world of social media, but actually the people that you're liaising with day to day. Because ultimately, the reason that this is successful versus branded content is because it's people like us, that people like them that you see in the content, and authenticity. I've got that word in already.
Yes. That's social media presentation bingo 101, that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you can also see, based on this data, short form video reigns supreme again in terms of this content format. I think the important point to everything that you've just said, Luan, which 100% agree with, leveraging long-term partnerships is something that this data was seeing great growth, where we see repeat engagement around a certain brand, because trust takes time to form. And we can't do that if we're interchanging to say, oh, influencer X, could you just post about this? That very rarely yields the desired response. It's all about genuine advocacy. And that's the thing that builds trust at scale.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat, so I'm interrupting you, but I'm going to get to this because this is great. Someone has already put, sorry, I can't see your name on the screen that I'm looking at. Do you have any recommended resources on collaborating on social media? My interesting story. I did a presentation on this to some university students earlier this year and put up a whole list of, BuzzSumo and all those kind of SEMrush and other tools that you could use to go out and find influencers by looking at data. And a brilliant student did say, which one should I use? And I said, none of them. Do your own manual research, engage with your audience, be in the ecosystem, see who people are mentioning, following, who's commenting. It's not a quick win to find those collaborators. I'm not saying you can just Google social search and get a list tomorrow, but think about who is it your audience follows, who they trust, and who is putting out regular, consistent, quality content.
Yep, agreed with all of the above. You do have platform native tools that you can use, like Instagram Creator Marketplace as well. So you can search that to give you a fast start, because it's free, easy to access as well. So yeah, hopefully it gives TikTok you some guidance. Yeah, exactly. Same on TikTok. Not every platform has its own Creator Marketplace, but there are good sources to check out, particularly if you're niche though. Nothing beats just a keyword search. Say like LinkedIn, for example. I'm always searching LinkedIn for like B2B social media people. And if you look at all of the posts on LinkedIn related to that, you'll start to find really interesting people that tend to get a lot of engagement on their content. And then what happens next? Just a little cold outreach DM, and then build your relationships from there. It takes time, but it's very much worth the effort.
Yeah.
And talking of the influencer thing, this is from YouGov. So, and I see some UK data here. 3 in 5 consumers find social media influencers to be a useful source of tech information. As you can see, tech index is very high. Based on your industry, naturally, influencers rank slightly higher. So again, this is all about in the era of trust, where people are gaining that reputation and that feeling of like, this is an okay brand to support. And that typically happens through it being represented by people they trust, those creators, those influencers, and also from that person having domain expertise in that space. And that's a key thing, especially when we're thinking about like B2B influence. Either way, influence, we know influencers are such a key part of social media growth. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's only going to become more powerful, because us as consumers will start to look to other sources to gain the genuine recommendations that we crave. Unsurprisingly, again, in the least surprising news story ever, video dominates time spent on social. That will surprise precisely no one, but it's very interesting to see at a platform level the time spent watching video. So if we look at this, Instagram has seen good growth, same growth on TikTok. We're seeing Facebook nudge up marginally. Interesting, YouTube's gone down a little bit. Maybe that's been eaten into by some of the other short form social networks. I wouldn't say this is a anything close to YouTube's demise, just so you know. And we're going to be we'll be sharing some very, very interesting data related to YouTube anyway. But it's very interesting to see that video, again, is driving the time spent on social. Again, more time spent, more organic reach. So very important to consider that as part of our strategy. Talking of video consumption, we've got quite a lot of data related to this. I'm gonna carry on, and we'll go through some thoughts at the end. On YouTube, the longer side of short form video is performing better. So here, when we say longer, this is 30 to 60 seconds, which I think for most of us as businesses is a lot more realistic for us to create content with meaning. Something between 15 to 30 seconds is very hard to create, I would say. I'm certainly not creative enough for that. But we see the increase in uploads, engagement's marginally down, but views, which I think we're going to talk about that today, about the importance of views as an overall metric. And you'll notice that it's the longer videos that are performing slightly better on YouTube Shorts specifically. Moving that over to TikTok, we see a similar trend, but even slightly longer as well. Again, we're seeing longer form YouTube content between 1 to 2 minutes, uploads increasing, and the highest percentage of view increase. It seems to be that TikTok are pushing more towards longer form content. It's for obvious reasons. Longer form content drives higher audience retention, as we've just seen from the data as to the minutes spent on the platform, which again, to the earlier point, drives organic growth. So I think all of that data is quite encouraging for us as businesses, because it's quite realistic for us to then create content between 30 seconds to 2 minutes across these two platforms. And also quite nice to reinforce the fact I've always been creating at about the 90-second mark. So it's good. Bang on target. Talking about TikTok still, and I think this is very important for us kind of B2B folk that might be on this call. Seeing strong growth in business and finance. TikTok is starting to see an extra level of maturity as well in certain corners of the platform, where we're seeing the rise of like FinTok, for example, for around financial advice. Business and finance is the fastest growing segment on TikTok right now. So it's very encouraging actually for us who might be working more kind of business oriented applications, that it's very much the case that TikTok is crossing that chasm from like a core consumer app to one that's incredibly useful for businesses that are marketing to other businesses too. So it's important that we might want to consider TikTok as part of our mix, provided that we've done the audience research that you always talk to, Luan. Mm-hmm. Still with video, lots going on with video. I think you probably got the idea that video is kind of important. LinkedIn's reporting that video uploads are up 34% year on year. I haven't seen any data related to the engagement of said videos. But of course, I don't know if you have this yet, actually, Luan, because you're closer to LinkedIn than I am. You got that like videos for you option yet?
No, I haven't. And it's quite interesting because, again, I've seen people talking about it and sharing it and knew it was coming. I don't have it yet on any of the accounts that I have viewed recently. But it did launch over the summer, didn't it? When we know it is relatively quiet. So I think it's going to kind of step up over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I would expect so. It's going to be very interesting as well. I mean, a nice way of kind of getting a sneak preview into it, because everyone will have this ability. If you click on a video on mobile or on LinkedIn, you'll then be taken into the vertical feed where you can start scrolling through it. You'll also, I'd recommend you kind of pay a bit of attention to what you're getting served, because you'll notice that quite a lot of that's outer network. So you will see content from people that you follow, but you'll see quite a lot of content from people you don't. So it's very interesting sneak peek into how LinkedIn are potentially thinking about their algorithm differently as it relates to the video feed versus the standard feed that we see when we first access the app. So definitely go and check that one out. Times are changing with LinkedIn, it's fair to say. Talking about video, and I think this stat kind of blew me away from how significant it is. And you know how it said YouTube's not going away anytime soon. YouTube's now the biggest streaming platform, representing 10%, as you can see here, of all TV viewing. I think this is sometimes like a bewildering concept to understand, certainly for me, maybe because of my small brain. But like the fact that our social content is consumed or can be consumed on TVs. Increasingly, people are spending more time watching YouTube on their connected TVs than Netflix. Already speaks volumes of how critical YouTube could be as a platform for us. Again, they're closing in on 3 billion users, so it's the only platform that's closer, as close to the Meta suite of products. So a huge opportunity that still exists in YouTube. And I think, Luan, some data you shared earlier this week showed that B2B specifically most of them aren't increasing their investments in YouTube. I think I remember that right.
No, they're not. I think video overall, but not necessarily in YouTube. Their B2Bs are increasing their investment in LinkedIn. So, one, that's a good thing because we're talking about it sharing, but also have they not been investing there before? But also we're investing more in actually all of the platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, but not as much in X.
Yeah.
We don't need to go into that.
We'll touch on that in a second. Talking about growth, however, Reddit, in terms of time spent per day, right now, Reddit is the fastest growing platform. What's driving that is the partnership with Google. You might have noticed if you're ever Googling a question, you're going to notice that ranked very highly is Reddit. You'll see a huge amount. So it used to be the case that, nerds like myself we use Google and put Reddit at the end of our search term so we could just look at stuff related to Reddit. But in fact, Reddit's just like defaulted. And people are reporting, and advertisers are reporting great click-through rates, which is great. And a lot of conversation is happening on Reddit. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone goes, all right, down tools, I need to start creating content on Reddit. Not that, but it's interesting for us to know how quickly this is growing. Again, this is part of our broader audience research, our users spending time on Reddit. It's a great listening platform. So, and that's the way that I've typically used the platform, not as a content creation tool, but just as one to really get a sense of what people are saying. Kind of, it's akin to Twitter, I would say, or X, in the way that I certainly used to use Twitter back in the day to understand the sentiment of something. I don't know if you've got any extra takes on that.
Yeah, that's my experience of playing with Reddit as well, is that research tool. And I think that the overarching point here is that we do use more than one social media platform. The stat on that is still 6.7 on average. We don't need to actively post on every social media platform. Different platforms play different roles in people's lives, work and personal, same person. But for me, Reddit, X, Pinterest are absolutely the listening. What are people talking about? What are the conversations? What questions are people are asking? Then I pull that into content on the platforms where I engage with my followers.
Love that. We touched on this actually, and I've probably given a spoiler alert already for this one. B2B is finally taking social more seriously, seeing B2Bs increasing their investment in social media content and video specifically. As we spoke about earlier, the investment is not as heavily prioritized towards YouTube as I think it possibly should be. But certainly it's really encouraging to see that actually it's being recognized. Social is being recognized as a crucial strategic opportunity for B2Bs, people taking it seriously, which is good.
It is good, but I'm going to say it's not easy. We're not kind of saying this quite flippantly of like, it's all about video and you've got to do this because that's where everyone's investing. We know it's not easy. We both know, we both create short form video every week. It takes more than 60 seconds to create a 60-second video. Sometimes, I don't know about you, Andy, sometimes I take it about 6 times and then walk away, have a cup of coffee and just start all over again. It's not quick, it's not easy. Even if you've got a regular content format like both Andy and I have, but you've also got to get your colleagues involved as well. And I will put in the chat afterwards, because there's a brilliant example, if no one's seen it, of the chief exec from Aviva doing a TikTok where his whole LinkedIn post and his TikTok is like, the team made me do it, so I've done it. And it's kind of him running away from the marketing team. But then in seriousness, he does this LinkedIn post saying, the next generation of our customers and our employees are here. So I know I need to do this and get involved. So if chief execs can do it and you can show those examples, you can do this, but it does take some input and some planning and some prep.
Yeah, love that example. Talking of social shopping, so flipping from a B2B lens into something a bit more B2C here, Facebook is leading in terms of the amount of people. This is focused on US audience, bear in mind. People who have bought something on Facebook. Guess what's driving that on Facebook? Good old marketplace. So it's not people just buying stuff from ads on Facebook. It's a huge component of Facebook, actually, is the marketplace platform. And yeah, clearly driving a lot of sales on it too. But kind of the thing that's, I think, particularly interesting as it relates to businesses, though, as opposed to consumers, is that these are the platforms that are driving the vast majority of repeat purchases. So whilst most people within the last month has shopped on Facebook, whereas more people are shopping more frequently on these platforms, which is very interesting to see that Reddit again is so high on here. We knew TikTok would be high because, you know, TikTok shop, etc. Just goes to show, I think, and I've certainly seen this in the narrative from networks. When we were, Luan, when you and I were doing this in like 2021, we couldn't stop talking about like social shopping, social commerce, etc., because all the networks are falling over themselves to do all this and as you know, lockdowns nationwide, yada yada. So social became a very important commerce play for businesses. Then that all kind of went away. No one wanted it, but it seems like it's coming back. So that's what it kind of feels like to me. It feels like attitudes are changing slightly, where more people feel okay to be shopping on social again. So that's what I'm feeling. But don't know about you.
I shop on social. I think TikTok confession. TikTok in particular, I think, has driven this in terms of TikTok shop. But I think these stats are particularly important because we're now in mid-September. We are coming up to Black Friday, Thanksgiving, Christmas. You know, it will start earlier. So if e-commerce shopping is something that you are involved with, you've probably already planned Christmas. If not, you need to do it in the next few weeks.
Definitely. Good call. You mentioned about X and the declines. So this is what X looks like in Europe right now. That kind of mass exodus, pardon the pun, that we were talking about when Threads got released didn't really happen. It's taken a lot longer for it to happen. I think this is just a really interesting lesson in change anyway. We always expect that, you know, a trigger event is going to cause an immediate reaction. And in the case of social, it's very rarely the case. Very rarely is it like, oh, Threads got released. It's going to the moon. It's going to grow tremendously. It takes time for behaviors to change. I think that's reassuring for us as marketers. When there's so much going on, we don't necessarily need to like do knee-jerk reactions. We can take our time to consider. So only now, 2 years later, we're starting to now see X in decline. And brands' usage of X is steeply declining, particularly like spend. I don't need to explain why. You'll all know this anyway. So you posted something very interesting, actually, with some very interesting conversation on it earlier today, Luan. Why don't you talk to that?
I did. So I hosted a workshop yesterday, and one of the topics that we covered, because we talk about all the different social media platforms, you know, everyone is asking now, are you leaving? Are you staying? What are you doing? How are you doing it? So we had a discussion about it yesterday, and we used data as our answer. So I had a guest speaker from Orlo who had been looking at a particular sector's data to see whether their customers had left and where the conversations in that industry sector were going. And they were still on X. Slight dip early August around the protests, which is when we've seen the data that there was another exodus from the platform. But the conclusion of the conversation was maybe use it for a listen first platform, like we said a few minutes ago, and maybe hang around for the what ifs, because we don't know what's going to happen. I've seen some brilliant posts from organizations pinning their posts saying we are leaving, most often because of ethics and aligned values. But I've also seen some posts from organizations going, we're staying because we know that this is where we're hearing real time what people are thinking and feeling, and that our audience are still on this platform. So it is in a state of flux. We need to be led by data, overall trends, and our own. But I don't think I'm sticking with the stay around for the what ifs.
Yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
And this later as well.
There you go. So really hammer home the point.
Yeah. Slight decline in X over the last, what is this, almost like 18 months, 2 years, increase in threads. So they are trends, but there is still a massive gap. So we didn't, like Andy said, see that big exodus to we're all going to stop doing this and we're going to go over here. Threads is, a very different environment to X. It does have that feeling for those of us that have been working in it long enough that it's what Twitter used to be. It is growing, it is developing more features, but no DMing on the platform yet. So slight decline, increase, still a big gap.
Yeah, I think it's a really good narrative, actually. And it's nice to see some realistic data. That means that, we can take our time to consider this. It's not, we always feel like we're missing something. We're missing out on something. We need to do something immediately, when actually we just take our time to really consider it, as you say, Luan. Feature time, over to you.
Okay, platform by platform. I'll do a handful, Andy will do a handful, and then we'll wrap up. Just one for Meta. Things do happen, but just one for Meta, and quite a big one is around bots and AI. And this is in the US at the moment, so not rolled out to the UK, but being able to create an AI character of yourself. Andy and I, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago, we did a specific AI session entirely with lots of examples. I'll pop the link in the event later, but we did have a bit of a debate around how do we feel about this? Is this a good thing to create an AI version of you? Will people know it's an AI version? I'm still not sure on this one.
Yeah, jury's out for me too on this one. I believe there's going to be some useful value for businesses in having like bots to respond to customer service questions when a social media manager can't be there or customer service team can't be there. I think there's utility in that, but I think, trust is at a premium right now. So I don't think as brands, we want to do anything to compromise the trust that we have. So that's my narrative on that.
But where everything has been happening over the past few weeks is on Instagram, and some fairly significant shifts. But shifts that Adam Missouri, if you're not following him, we've told you before, follow him. He is telling us what's happening, and he has been hinting and driving us in this direction. They have now changed their insights. It is now focused on views. So views are more important than followers, according to Instagram. They are not so concerned about followers and likes. They've changed all the metrics in the app to be about views, whether that's reels, whether that's carousels. We are now looking at views. And in part, this is down to a couple of things we've been talking about. People are sharing more privately than they are publicly, so less comments. It's about views, but also because a lot of our feeds now are algorithmically driven, starting off with TikTok and the For You feed. So we have visibility of a lot of content from people we're not following. It's not just about our followers. So this is quite a big shift to get our heads around. What does this mean? What are we reporting on? And how do we adapt our content and our calls to action to play into this shift?
Really good points. And I think it underlines that the thing you just mentioned about there's a growing tendency for users to not comment on posts and not engage with content publicly. There's some reasons for that, but I think that was reflected in some of that video data we were sharing earlier. We saw that engagements were down, even though views were up. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that people don't want your content. It's people are watching it to the end is a really important metric, overall watch time. But anyway, I'm sure we'll come on to that.
Yeah. And then we've got some other analytics, and again, views and shares. So Instagram now allows you to sort by shares in your analytics. This is something the clients that I work with regularly, I've been challenging them on to think about how can they make their content and their calls to action more shareable. Because if this is what the analytics are telling us, what Instagram is telling us that they're prioritizing in terms of reach, we've got to make that shift from tell me what you think in the comments to making it shareable and driving those shares. Big change. Don't forget carousels though, because it's not all about video. Carousels are still performing really well on Instagram in particular, and you can now have up to 20 slides. Good for your post-summer photo dump. Or events, really good for events. So if anyone is coming along on the 6th of November, take at least 20 photos and pop them in a carousel.
I like that.
we talk about collabs. We love the collab features. And if anyone has tried to use a collab feature on Instagram, you'll know that if you don't tag your collaborator in straight away, you haven't been able to do it. Now being able to retroactively go through and tag your collaborators in your posts is a feature. I love this. Obviously, the collaborator that you tag does need to accept it. You can't just tag anyone in for it to appear on their feed. Something else, a small tweak that Adam Mazuri has said is that the collaborator with the larger audience, it's best if they are the originator. So if you're collaborating, decide who's got the bigger following, let them post it first and add the slightly smaller one in second.
I missed that advice. That's very, very good. Very important.
I'm not sure about this one, because how many of us, if we do focus on our grid and have spent many hours making sure it looks perfectly square and aligned, there is rumor testing, we've seen previews that the grid might be moving away from squares. You probably don't worry about this one, do you?
I don't care. But yeah, I appreciate it's kind of glib, but lots of people do. And it does make sense. And I expect that even though not everyone's got this view now, it will come to everyone, because it makes most sense given that the majority of content is in this orientation. It means that the Instagram portrait post layout is going to become much more important than square posts. So I'd start thinking about optimizing for that. But equally, whilst I understand from a design perspective, something like this looks good, the reality is it matters very little in terms of overall growth. So it's everyone's personal preference, and I suppose if you're a designer, I kind of get it, because that's your thing. But typically for most businesses, people don't really care. So there we go.
Engagement, commenting, being able to add comments to Instagram stories. I love Instagram stories. I'm posting more stories all the time, getting more engagement from them. So I love the fact that people can comment on them as well. Notes. This is the fascinating one. We talked about this months ago, and it's taken a while to roll out. Those older members may remember this on kind of MSN Messenger and Skype as well, how you put, what kind of day you're having or what you're up to. But Notes is really starting to roll out on Instagram, being able to put them on Reels, put them on grid posts, put them on your status as well. And actually, I saw someone do a brilliant post this morning that said, actually, if you're creating content for Instagram, allow a bit of space in the corner maybe for a note to go over the top of it. Really nice, simple interaction.
I like that. Good thinking.
Get notified when a user leaves a note on your post. So again, we're encouraging engagement, more behind the scenes, one-to-one private conversations. Making the messaging icon the main focus. Again, these all link together, don't they? And actually, it's nice to see all the shifts happening in alignment for their new direction. So we might see it's supposed to be a paper aeroplane icon for messaging in the main focus of our Instagram app.
Yeah, I think this is the only test we're sharing today, just purely on the basis that it really underlines Instagram's intent for it to become like a DM first platform. I don't know if this will go live at all, but certainly worthwhile paying attention to this. Everything that you've been talking about, Luan, about the importance of shares, the growth of DMs, stories, story comments. Yeah, that kind of deeper, more private interaction is utterly essential.
Quick question in the chat, and I don't know the answer to this. I haven't read anything. Aoife has asked, if the Instagram grid changes to square, what will happen to the changes from square? I think you mean what will happen to the existing grid? Have you seen anything on that?
Yeah, it will still exist. I've seen others show examples where their square post got zoomed in further.
Right.
So so it's not going to get rid of the grid. It just won't look as pretty as it once did, because essentially it's like you've resized that image to fill the void. So probably nothing you can do about that in advance other than changing your grid right now to focus on portrait. And the kind of curious thing is that I'm not even convinced whether other people have different experiences right now. So you could see your grid in square. I might look at a grid and see it in portrait, which I think I do see that. So who knows? Changing all the time. But my main message is, like, it's out of our control. Wouldn't really worry about it. So
till it happens.
yeah.
And again, broadcast channels, we've talked about these a few times as well. This kind of town hall one-to-many communications is one-to-many, but you now have the option to reply. It's not a reply all, it's not starting a conversation in a broadcast channel, but I guess if someone has a question about what's being posted, then they can do that. And I have seen a lot more of these appear in a more useful way. So, as you know, I work with a lot of universities and higher education. Everyone's going back to university now, so all these channels around what's happening in Welcome Week, new semester, etc., real value add. And then if you have a question, you can now reply.
Kind of feels like Instagram's Facebook groups
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Ads, overlay ads. I've seen quite a lot of these. At first I thought I was in Be Real or something like that again with the kind of the overlay. It's easy to forget which app you're in sometimes, isn't it? Ad format, Instagram Reels, seeing them organically as well, these kind of overlay features. Get clarity when your content is not being shown. We have to root around sometimes, don't we, in the insights to see some of these changes. Not every single one gets reported. And this is one like that will show, has your content been lowered in the feed? Lots of conversations around this. But again, Missouri has told us this stuff recently. He's told us that Reels need to be 90 seconds or less. He's told us not to go for engagement bait by asking for an emoji in the comments. So he has been telling us what does get devalued, but the fact that you can actually have a look at that on your account and see that as part of your content performance is probably really useful. Block unwanted commenters. Some of us may need it, some of us may not. Sometimes it may be useful for some brands, for some topics of conversation. There's obviously been some issues. And Instagram has been doing a lot around this. This comes back to that kind of online safety, staying in control, privacy settings. They've updated a new teen version in the last 24 hours as well. So if you do have issues on social media and you need to block, do it. Hiding share counts on Reels. This is also something we've seen quite a lot on Instagram. Originally, the hiding likes, hiding follower numbers was around, did it trigger mental health because of the kind of competitive nature of it? Was it a positive thing? Because if people see other people liking, the theory of reciprocity allows other people to go, oh, other people liked it, I should like it too. We can be in control of this. Do we want to hide our like counts? Do we want to hide our share counts? I guess it depends what your counts are like. Translation. For those of you that are working globally or recruiting globally, this might be useful as well. Good for accessibility, your captions, your translations, multiple language options. We've got more text options in terms of particularly stories as well. So, if you're getting creative within the app, you can use different fonts and text. Music. Here's a question for you, Andy, because you're much more into music than I am. This is that you can now add music to your Instagram profile. I did this in a members meeting session, and we had a conversation around what is our personal anthem or our walk-on music. What song would you pin to your profile as being yours? You can change it all the time, but do you have one overall? Is that...
Yeah, I listen to such miserable music. I probably wouldn't want to disclose that publicly, to be honest with you. So, yeah, my word, this gives me some MySpace vibes, doesn't it?
Come back to it. If you have got a theme song or a walk-on music, pop it in the chats, because I will share quite guilty pleasure. Mine has always been McFly, Don't Stop Me Now version.
Oh, I guess that's the cover of Queen, right?
Queen, yeah, but McFly version, yeah.
Love it.
Danny fan.
Oh, amazing.
Cross-posting. We're not always a fan of cross-posting, are we? We do advocate nuancing between social media platforms, but they are trying to push Threads, so encouraging cross-posting from Instagram to Threads. Text options, again, if you're creating reels and stories, you can now use some different fonts in there. Are we done with Instagram yet? No.
No, we're
not. More stickers in your photos and your carousel posts. So originally, we had really limited stickers that we could use. Now you can create your own stickers and cutouts and things like that. It's just about making your posts, photos, carousel posts, more interactive, more creative, new options. No one's putting their theme song. You must have one. Someone must have one, not just me. Facebook. Editing a reel after posting. This is probably, it's a bit like editing a tweet, isn't it? It's just one thing that we always wanted to do because we noticed that something didn't work or we missed a photo out. Facebook Reels have now added that. Pinning comments on Facebook Reels. It's quite interesting that Facebook have kind of added these new features, but we're not seeing that they're on Instagram as well. I don't know about you. For me, Reels are kind of Instagram first, and then I share them across. I don't see a lot of kind of Facebook Reel first content at the moment, but pinning comments, I'm always a big fan of pinned comments.
Yeah, I think on that point, yeah, it's definitely a very how I wish LinkedIn. I think they brought in that feature momentarily and they got rid of it, but yeah, pinning comments so important. But just a point on Facebook Reels, it seems like there's a lot of momentum on Facebook around Reels, and you saw from the data earlier that there's increased time spent watching video on Facebook. I think it makes about 40% of the time that's spent on Facebook is spent watching Reels. So it does feel like that's one of the small corners of Facebook that's still yielding good organic reach. And as you already said, Luan, it's quite easy now to repurpose our Insta Reels, which we might create for Insta first, but repurposing that to Facebook to see if that yields some upside, especially since Facebook's algorithm has changed for Reels, or is different for Reels than it is for the feed, because it's much more algorithmically recommended, media driven, and that gives us an opportunity to reach more folk. So I think that's a good thing to potentially try.
Cool. Multiple action buttons to your Facebook page. So again, this is where, and again, on the training workshops, I always deliver it's, let's do some housekeeping. Let's go through our Facebook profiles and all our other profiles and just check things, whether that's monthly or quarterly. What buttons have you got? What links have you got? Have any privacy settings changed? So being able to add 2 buttons at the top of the page, it's all about those calls to action. Don't forget them.
Definitely.
I'll keep going.
Keep on going. Keep on rocking.
LinkedIn. I've had a lot of caffeine today. LinkedIn verification for company pages. So you may have seen this on your personal profile for a while, kind of popping up, need to get verified. Whether you do or you don't can be a personal choice. I had to do it earlier today because I couldn't get back into my LinkedIn account. It took me 2 minutes on the app to scan in my driving license and is all fine now. They're now rolling it out to LinkedIn company pages. This isn't something that you can apply for. This isn't something that you can do. LinkedIn are working their way through company pages, and at some point you'll get a notification about it. So it's there, but there's no actions to take. Newsletters. We've talked about newsletters on and off. They originally started as a creator mode, personal profiles. Now you can have them on company pages. LinkedIn have now got the ad format, where you can put money behind a newsletter. You can do that for your own company page one, or you can put some money behind an employee newsletter as well. And I really like these new formats.
Certainly behind an employee newsletter. I think it feels like the LinkedIn thought leadership ads too, right? So it's another way of like celebrating the unique individuals behind our business. Like you spoke about this earlier, right? About getting others involved in your content creation efforts, and speaks to that first point that we started this presentation with about the importance of like the individuals behind your content is I think this gives us some really interesting opportunity.
We've done this. They're introducing a videos for you feed.
Yeah, exactly. Touched on this. TikTok. We're actually making surprisingly good time, to be honest. So we're looking good. All right, custom thumbnails for TikTok, because if you want your TikTok grid, if you want to call it that, to look a little bit better, you can just add a custom thumbnail. Can be great to allow other people to watch your content and be encouraged to watch multiple different parts of content. I've seen people do their content like stories across multiple different posts. So those thumbnails gives you an opportunity to signpost people to where you want them to go next. Voice search, I think that really emphasizes how powerful TikTok is in terms of being a search engine. Now, it's not a globally used search engine by every demographic. Clearly, the younger audience typically will default to TikTok first. But as we've mentioned before, TikTok is one of the first real threats to Google's dominance that they've had to face. And it's pretty significant. I'd love to know if anyone in the chat who defaults to TikTok first for doing searches. It's now my default whenever I'm looking for places to stay or things to do whenever I'm visiting somewhere. Actually genuinely like useful content, user generated content that I can trust more than, you know, a TripAdvisor listing, for example. So I think voice search takes this to another level, makes it more accessible, and really goes to show the emphasis that TikTok is giving, becoming like the platform for discovery. And it's really important, like both intentional discovery, TikTok is good for. So like when I want to look for a restaurant in Reading, you know, it's great for that. But it's also great for more kind of unintentional discovery. So recommended algorithms serving you content based on your own likes and what TikTok is inferring about you. So on both of those dynamics, TikTok is really strong. So yeah, a lot, as you can tell, I'm still fairly buoyant about TikTok, and it looks like the case for TikTok getting banned seems to be losing a bit of steam too. Anyway, cloning your own voice with AI, which you now can do. So you mentioned doing 6 takes and then needing a coffee, Luan. You could just type in what you wanted to say and, you know, just allow TikTok to generate your voice. Is that okay? Is that inauthentic? Is that actually just useful? I think I'm mixed on this, to be honest with you. I think a lot of this stuff is, and like the bots you mentioned earlier, Luan, it's going to challenge some of our fundamental beliefs. This is very useful, managing your topics on TikTok to have a really good experience. This is why TikTok's algorithm is so good to infer its understanding about the topics of the content that you talk about and you promote. But now, if we're on the receiving end of this content, we can just use these sliders to choose what do we actually want to hear more about, so we can actually have a more healthy experience on TikTok. And the rest, a couple of things for threads. They're improving topic tags. As you might recall, topic tags is their version of hashtags, because I don't want to go down the route of hashtags because that's very Twitter. And you can only have one per post. I think that's very useful. Stops people kind of like hashtag strategy and hacking and like nonsense spam hitting the feeds. So this, I think, is a much better way of searching things that is absolutely relevant related to the post, and it means it's just a bit of a simplifier for our strategy too. And here now, what we can see, if we're looking at the basketball finals, we can look at top recent and profiles that are talking about this. Very Twitter-esque, to be honest. And again, you know, that's just helping threads become more in the moment and be that digital town square that they're looking to become, of which they're not quite becoming yet, but they seem to be slowly getting there. Threads has also added analytics on desktop. And interestingly, I'm getting many more questions from people who are starting to see success on Threads and then want to be able to publish their content on Threads through Adobe Express too. So I'm feeling a lot more pressure here now, which is good. It means that lots more people are considering Threads as a viable platform for their marketing strategies, which is encouraging. Threads has hit 200 million users. Does that actually matter? Not really. It is growing. There's still a big gap between Threads and X. If your audience are there, however, it doesn't really matter whether it's got 200 million or 5 million. It doesn't really matter. All we need to care about is like, is our right audience there? And we can discern that by spending just a bit of time on the platform, spending some time searching, looking through those tags that might be relevant to you, and seeing the narrative of the conversation. You know, to all your points you spoke about earlier about finding like the right creators to work with. And with that, shock horror, that's a lot. How we did that. We've done that in fairly good time. So let's summarize it. There's lots of stuff that's happened here, but actually there are some, 4 underlying themes that connect everything we've spoken about together. Social video dominating. We've seen the longer side of short form content working well. Engagements are slightly down, but that's understandable because we're seeing a decrease in users wanting to publicly engage, but views and watch times are up overall. And views increasingly are becoming a very important metric. That might be something to consider as to how we factor that into our KPIs, etc., and how we report. Increasing consumption across all platforms. Social media becoming more fragmented, it's becoming more personal, becoming more niche. And I think this is an interesting side to social, of which I don't have a real way of helping people and businesses unlock this. Well, this is more of a theme that I'm watching to see how this is going to play out, to be honest with you. And when I say more fragmented and private, I mean that we're seeing like the decline and dominance of Twitter slowly, but we're starting to see growth of other platforms like Bluesky and Mastodon, for example, which are still growing well. Growth of Reddit that we've spoken about. Lots more fragmentation in smaller niche communities. How we leverage that might well be best thought about by working with others that are already natively in those platforms, or just having a, the mindset that you often advocate for, Luan, which is just approaching it all with a degree of curiosity. Like, let's try and understand where our users are. Let's be open-minded and figure it out. We know full well we're not going to be everywhere, but where do we think we might want to optimize and refine our strategies for 25? And then finally, LinkedIn still looks like an incredible opportunity. That video feed, certainly for anyone that's focused on kind of B2B, to be honest with you, LinkedIn still seems like the place to be. Pardon the pun. Love the sponsored newsletters. And the video feed, I think, is going to represent some really interesting opportunities for those that are getting into video on LinkedIn, particularly vertical video. Those that are getting started early in that, I think will yield some good results. Anything you would add?
I don't think so. I think there was a lot in there. I think it's going back. We did spend more time on Instagram because that is where the changes are happening. There is some questions in the chat around Reels and Facebook Reels versus Instagram Reels. We'll take that one away, I think, to try and find some data on that. But give it to us as a data challenge to see what we can find, because I don't know the answer to that one right now. No other questions, I don't think. I think we looked at those as we go on. I know many people do watch this as a recording afterwards. So if you are watching the recording, thank you, Chloe, for saying the Monsters Inc. theme tune. I like that one. Andy, you need to come back on that answer. I'm going to hold you to the answer. Or even one a week, or one each session. We should start with a theme tune, maybe. No. Join us again on October the 31st for our social media roundups. I've just put the link in the event. If you are in B2B, if you can get to London on the 6th of November and spend the day with us, we would absolutely love to see you there. We're really excited about it. But yeah, we got that done in an hour. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for spending a bit of time with us. Really hope you found it useful.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.